Imagine if I told you that one empire controlled more of the world than any other civilization in ancient history, stretching from India to Greece, from the scorching deserts of Africa to the frozen steppes of Central Asia. An empire so vast that when its messengers rode from one end to the other, they would cross 3 continents and dozens of modern countries. This is the story of Persia, and today we're diving deep into the complete history of one of humanity's most fascinating civilizations. What makes the Persian Empire so incredible isn't just its size, though that's mind-blowing enough. It's the fact that they created the world's first truly multicultural superpower, where dozens of different peoples, languages, and religions coexisted under one banner. While other ancient empires ruled through fear and oppression, Persia built something revolutionary, a system of governance so advanced that it influenced every major civilization that came after it. Imagine walking through the streets of Persepolis and hearing Egyptian, Greek, Babylonian, and Persian all being spoken at once. That was the kind of cultural mosaic the empire fostered. But here's the thing that will shock you. Everything you think you know about ancient Persia is probably wrong. Hollywood movies and popular culture have painted them as villains, the enemy of freedom-loving Greeks. The reality? They were pioneers of human rights, religious tolerance, and administrative genius. They abolished slavery in many regions, freed the Jewish people from Babylonian captivity, and created the world's first postal system. The Persian story begins not with kings and palaces, but with nomadic tribes wandering the harsh Iranian plateau around 1000 BCE. These weren't the sophisticated court dwellers we often imagine, but tough horse-riding warriors who had learned to survive in one of the world's most unforgiving landscapes. The Persians, originally called the Parsa, were just one tribe among many scattered across this vast region of windswept mountains and arid plains. What changed everything was a man named Cyrus. Born around 600 BCE, Cyrus the Great didn't start as a great king. He inherited leadership of a small Persian tribe that was actually vassals to the more powerful Medes. But Cyrus possessed something that would reshape the ancient world, an incredible ability to unite people rather than simply conquer them. This wasn't your typical ancient warlord who ruled through terror. In 550 BCE, Cyrus did something that shocked the ancient world. Instead of accepting Persian subjugation to the Medes forever, he launched a rebellion. But here's the brilliant part. He convinced many Median nobles to join him, promising them positions in his new government rather than execution. Imagine being one of those nobles, faced with the choice of death under a tyrant or dignity under a new leader. Cyrus offered a future, and they chose him. When the dust settled, Cyrus hadn't just defeated the Medes, he had absorbed them, creating the first Persian Empire through diplomacy as much as warfare. This set the pattern for everything that followed. Where other conquerors destroyed, Cyrus preserved. Where others imposed their culture, he celebrated local traditions. His next target was Lydia, the incredibly wealthy kingdom in what's now Turkey. King Croesus of Lydia was legendarily rich, so rich that we still say rich as Croesus today. After defeating Croesus in 546 BCE, Cyrus could have executed him and seized all his gold. Instead, he made Croesus an advisor, keeping Lydian administrative systems intact while incorporating their wealth into his growing empire. But Cyrus's masterstroke came in 539 BCE with the conquest of Babylon. Babylon wasn't just any city, it was the greatest metropolis of the ancient world, home to the legendary Hanging Gardens and the Tower of Babel from biblical stories. Imagine towering ziggurats rising over bustling markets, canals shimmering in the desert sun, and scholars debating astronomy beneath temple walls. The Babylonian king Nabonidus had made himself deeply unpopular by favoring the moon god over Babylon's patron deity, Marduk. Cyrus brilliantly positioned himself as Marduk's chosen liberator, walking into Babylon without a fight as the population welcomed him as a hero. What Cyrus did next changed history forever. He issued what's now called the Cyrus Cylinder, often considered the world's first charter of human rights. This clay cylinder, which you can see today in the British Museum, proclaimed that all peoples under Persian rule would be free to practice their religions, speak their languages, and maintain their customs. More incredibly, he freed all slaves and allowed exiled peoples to return to their homelands. This included the Jewish people, who had been captives in Babylon for decades. Cyrus not only freed them, but funded the rebuilding of their temple in Jerusalem. In Jewish tradition, Cyrus is called a Messiah, an anointed one of God. This wasn't just tolerance. This was active support for diversity in an age when most empires sought to homogenize their subjects. When Cyrus died in 530 BCE, fighting nomadic tribes on the empire's northeastern frontier, he left behind something unprecedented in human history. An empire that stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, encompassing perhaps 40 million people speaking dozens of languages and following countless different traditions, all united under Persian rule through respect rather than oppression. His son Cambyses II continued the expansion, conquering Egypt in 525 BCE. Picture Persian troops marching into Memphis, where the Nile's fertile banks contrasted sharply with the dry Iranian plateau. But Cambyses lacked his father's diplomatic genius, ruling Egypt harshly and alienating the Persian nobility. When he died under mysterious circumstances in 522 BCE, the empire nearly collapsed into civil war. Multiple claimants emerged, rebellions broke out across the provinces, and it seemed like Cyrus's great experiment in multicultural empire might die with its founder. Enter Darius I, one of history's most underrated figures. Darius wasn't even in the direct royal line, but he was a Persian noble with incredible organizational skills and ruthless efficiency. In a single year, 522 to 521 BCE, Darius fought 19 battles and put down rebellions from India to Egypt. But his real genius wasn't military, it was administrative. Darius realized that Cyrus's empire, while brilliant in concept, needed systematic organization to survive. He divided the vast territory into 20 provinces called satrapies, each governed by a satrap who answered directly to the king. But here's the clever part. He created multiple chains of command so no single person could accumulate enough power to rebel. Satraps controlled civil administration, but military commanders reported separately to the king. Royal inspectors, called the eyes and ears of the king, traveled constantly, ensuring loyalty and efficiency. To connect this massive empire, Darius built the world's most sophisticated communication system. The royal road stretched 1,600 miles from Sardis in western Turkey to Susa in Iran, with relay stations every 14 miles where fresh horses waited. Imagine a courier racing along the dusty road, changing horses at each station, carrying an urgent message across 3 continents. A message could travel the entire distance in just 7 days, a speed that wouldn't be matched until the invention of the telegraph over 2,000 years later. Under Darius, Persian engineering reached incredible heights. At Persepolis, his new ceremonial capital, Persian craftsmen carved massive stone reliefs showing representatives of all 28 nations bringing tribute to the great king. But look closely at these carvings and you'll notice something remarkable. The tributaries aren't depicted as conquered slaves, but as dignified representatives of their peoples, many wearing their traditional dress and carrying gifts that represent their homeland's greatest achievements. Darius also revolutionized economics, creating a standardized currency system across the empire and establishing the first international banking network. Persian merchants could deposit gold in Babylon and withdraw the equivalent in silver in Egypt using clay tablets that functioned like ancient checks. This economic integration created unprecedented prosperity across the ancient world, knitting together regions that had once seemed impossibly far apart. But Darius's greatest challenge came from an unexpected source. In 499 BCE, Greek city-states in Ionia, on the western coast of what's now Turkey, rebelled against Persian rule. These weren't major territories, just a handful of trading cities, but they had support from mainland Greece, particularly Athens. Darius crushed the rebellion, but the involvement of Athens infuriated him. How dare this tiny collection of city-states interfere in Persian affairs? This began the famous Greco-Persian Wars that Hollywood loves to dramatize. But here's what movies get wrong. This wasn't a clash between freedom and tyranny. Many Greeks actually preferred Persian rule, which was often more tolerant and less demanding than rule by their own Greek tyrants. The Persians employed thousands of Greek soldiers, artists, and advisors. This was a conflict between two different visions of how the world should be organized. The first Persian expedition to punish Athens ended in disaster at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE, where 25,000 Persians were defeated by just 11,000 Greeks. But this wasn't the crushing defeat popular history suggests. For the Persians, this was a minor setback on a distant frontier. For the Greeks, it was a miracle that saved their civilization. When Darius died in 486 BCE, his son Xerxes inherited both the throne and the unfinished business with Greece. Xerxes was different from his predecessors, more impulsive, more concerned with personal glory than administrative excellence. He assembled the largest military force the ancient world had ever seen, perhaps 2 million people, including support staff, and marched on Greece in 480 BCE. What followed were some of history's most famous battles: the heroic stand of Leonidas and his 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, where they held off the Persian advance for 3 days before being overwhelmed. The naval battle of Salamis, where clever Greek tactics destroyed much of the Persian fleet in the narrow straits between the mainland and the island of Salamis. And finally Plataea, where the remaining Persian land army was defeated and driven from Greek soil. But here's the perspective you never hear. For Persia, the Greek campaigns were a sideshow. While Xerxes was losing battles in Greece, Persian administrators were peacefully governing territories from India to Ethiopia. The defeat in Greece was embarrassing but hardly existential. The empire continued to prosper for another 150 years, and many Greek intellectuals, including the historian Herodotus, spent time in Persian territories, marveling at their organization and cultural diversity. After the Greek Wars, Persia entered what historians call its golden age under Artaxerxes I. This period saw incredible cultural flowering, with Persian art, literature, and philosophy reaching new heights. The religion of Zoroastrianism, with its emphasis on the cosmic battle between good and evil, influenced Jewish, Christian, and Islamic theology. Persian poetry and storytelling traditions laid the groundwork for works like the Arabian Nights. Persian medicine was the most advanced in the world, with hospitals in major cities and medical schools that trained doctors from across the known world. Their astronomical observations were so precise that Persian calculations of the length of a year were accurate to within minutes of modern measurements. They developed algebra, advanced metallurgy, and engineering techniques that wouldn't be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years. The empire's wealth was legendary. Persian kings dined from golden plates while sitting on thrones carved from single pieces of ivory. The royal gardens at Ctesiphon were so magnificent that they inspired the Islamic concept of paradise. But this wasn't mere luxury, it was statecraft. The great king's magnificence demonstrated Persian power to foreign ambassadors and reminded subjects that they belonged to the world's greatest civilization. However, this golden age contained the seeds of future problems. As generations passed, Persian nobles became more focused on court intrigue than military service. The empire's vast wealth made it easier to hire foreign mercenaries than train Persian soldiers. Greek mercenaries became common in Persian armies, bringing with them new military techniques but also divided loyalties. The 4th century BCE saw increasing instability as weak kings struggled to control ambitious satraps. Cyrus the Younger, brother of King Artaxerxes II, actually hired 10,000 Greek mercenaries and marched against his own brother in a civil war that weakened the empire's prestige. Although Artaxerxes II won, the fact that Greeks could march deep into Persian territory and then fight their way out showed that the empire wasn't invincible. Egypt rebelled and maintained independence for 60 years. Satraps in Asia Minor acted like independent kings. The central government struggled to maintain control over territories that Cyrus and Darius had held easily 2 centuries earlier. The Persian military, once invincible, now relied heavily on foreign troops who fought for gold rather than patriotism. Into this declining empire stepped one of history's most extraordinary figures, Alexander III of Macedon, later called Alexander the Great. In 334 BCE, at just 22 years old, Alexander crossed into Asia with 35,000 Macedonian and Greek soldiers, beginning a campaign that would end Persian independence forever. What's remarkable about Alexander's conquest isn't just its speed, though he conquered the entire Persian Empire in just 11 years. It's how he did it. Alexander didn't simply destroy Persian civilization, he absorbed it. After defeating Darius III at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, Alexander proclaimed himself the successor to the Persian throne, not just a foreign conqueror. Alexander adopted Persian court ceremonies, married Persian noblewomen, and encouraged his generals to do the same. He kept Persian administrators in their positions and maintained the satrapy system that Darius I had created. In many ways, Alexander's empire was simply the Persian Empire under Macedonian management. When Alexander died suddenly in Babylon in 323 BCE, his empire immediately split among his generals, called the Diadochi. But Persian influence didn't end. The Seleucid Empire controlled most of the old Persian heartland, maintaining Persian administrative systems and cultural traditions. The Parthians, who conquered most of Iran in the 3rd century BCE, explicitly claimed to be restoring Persian glory. Most remarkably, the Sasanian Empire, which ruled Persia from 224 to 651 CE, saw itself as the direct heir to the Achaemenid Empire of Cyrus and Darius. For over 4 centuries, the Sasanians fought the Roman and Byzantine empires as equals, controlling territory from the Indus River to the Euphrates. They developed new forms of Persian art and literature, and their kings claimed the title King of Kings, the same title used by Cyrus the Great 1,000 years earlier. The final chapter of ancient Persian independence came with the Arab conquest of 651 CE, but even this wasn't the end of Persian influence. The Abbasid Caliphate that ruled the Islamic world for 5 centuries was heavily influenced by Persian administrative traditions. Many of the greatest works of Islamic literature, science, and philosophy were created by Persian scholars writing in Arabic. The Persian language survived and eventually re-emerged as the literary language of the Islamic world from Turkey to India. But what's the lasting legacy of the Persian Empire? Why should we care about a civilization that ended over 1,300 years ago? The answer lies in what Persia proved was possible. For the first time in human history, the Persians showed that vast, diverse populations could be united under a single government while maintaining their distinct identities. They demonstrated that tolerance and respect could be more effective tools of empire than fear and oppression. The Persian model influenced every major empire that followed. The Roman concept of citizenship, the Islamic idea of the Ummah, the Byzantine administrative system, even the modern idea of multiculturalism, all have roots in Persian innovations. When Thomas Jefferson wrote about religious freedom in the First Amendment, he was unknowingly echoing principles first articulated by Cyrus the Great over 2,000 years earlier. Persian scientific and cultural achievements laid groundwork that we still build on today. Algebra, chemistry, and medicine all have Persian roots. Persian poetry influenced literature from Spain to Indonesia. The Persian calendar, based on precise astronomical observations, is still used in Iran and Afghanistan today, and it's actually more accurate than the Gregorian calendar used in the West. Perhaps most importantly, Persia proved that human civilization could operate on a truly global scale. At its height, the Persian Empire governed perhaps half of the world's population, connecting cultures and economies across 3 continents. They created the first truly international system of trade, communication, and governance. In an age when most people never traveled more than a few miles from their birthplace, Persians created a world where a merchant could travel from India to Greece using the same currency and following the same laws. The Persian story is ultimately a story about what happens when humans choose cooperation over conquest, when they build bridges instead of walls. It's about the incredible achievements possible when different peoples work together rather than against each other. And it's about the enduring power of ideas, because even though the last Persian Empire fell over a millennium ago, the principles they pioneered, tolerance, diversity, efficient governance, and cultural respect, remain as relevant today as they were in the time of Cyrus the Great. So the next time someone talks about ancient civilizations, remember that while Greece gave us democracy and Rome gave us law, Persia gave us something equally important: proof that the whole world could be one community, diverse but united, different but equal, a vision of human possibility that still inspires us today. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, subscribe, and share my channel with your friends and family. You can also click on the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos.